Hi, everybody. Happy New Year's Eve. I got my, you can see my little tag. Hold on, let's move that out, Jeb. Okay, so I'm going to move my hair. So you see my little bows. Look, I'm celebrating with my little bows.
Very festive.
They're black on a navy dress, so I feel like they don't stand out that much, but they're still supposed to be festive. It's a rental. And so speaking of New Year's resolutions, so I guess we weren't, but I'm just going to say, if you've ever thought about trying to lower your carbon footprint, renting and or buying secondhand clothes is a really easy way to do it because fast fashion is horrible for the environment. That is still technically under the climate sustainability umbrella, which includes the weather, but let's get back to the weather while we're on the topic. Today, you guys, was a pretty breezy day across the mountains. It really wasn't that bad here in Charlotte. However, because we've just been so dry and haven't seen rain in so long, plus the low humidity, there is still an elevated fire danger risk throughout this evening and early tomorrow morning. So this will likely end around, let's say, 8 o'clock or so. Now, that's just because that's when we'll start to see temperatures warm up and eventually, hopefully, the humidity starts to go up as well. You can see elevated is essentially a level 1 on the fire risk, but obviously there's an option to be 0, which is where we would prefer to be. Right now, winds are still gusting around 20 or so miles an hour across the mountains, around 15 here in the Charlotte area, 45 right now, feels like 41. Because our winds are still sustained around 7 miles an hour. So as you go throughout this evening, there will likely be a slight wind chill factor, but I would say not more than 2 to 3 degrees colder than what the actual temperature is that you see on the thermometer. As we go hour by hour, the New Year's forecast that we have that comes through our system, I did update these numbers, and I feel like they have not updated appropriately because 5 miles an hour at 40 should be closer to about a 37 feels like temperature, but alas, we know that the countdown is coming, and we know it's going to get colder. So 5, 4, 3, no, just kidding, we're early. But regardless, 40 degrees, feeling like the mid-30s at midnight, y'all. 2026 is almost upon us. It is kind of crazy that 2025 is about to come to an end. However, a really fun year because we got to launch Live Weather Impact. So hopefully you'll tune in 2026 with us. Temperatures tonight will be closer to where we should be for this time of year. About 53 and 33 are our averages for January 1st, December 31st. So 33 for a low in Charlotte. Still going to be chilly, just a little bit higher than the technical freezing mark. And then we're in the upper 20s there up in the mountains. Now, what we are not seeing right now is obviously any kind of rain, which is contributing to why we're under the elevated fire danger risk. However, that is likely going to change by Friday night and into Saturday. Now, here's the deal. We talked about this a little bit yesterday with meteorologist Tim Buckley, and we talked about this as well, myself with you Monday and Tuesday. But we have a complex storm system that's going to be sweeping across the country the next few days. It's right now developing on the west coast of the United States. And as it does so, it is going to bring us more clouds. That's a guarantee. And then that chance for rain. Now, 2 days ago, it was trending widespread rain all day Saturday. But this is why forecasters don't put something like 100% chance of rain still a week out, because then the next day, it was completely dry. And you saw that model last night on Live Weather Impact. All of the rain was south of us. So right now we're starting to see that trend back north. And this is why we discussed last night, again, if you were with us on the show, being cautiously optimistic about seeing rain. Now, no one, I don't think in the history of ever, wants it to rain on the weekend. But we need rain, and so we essentially will take it right when we can get it. We are still very, very dry in comparison to normal for this time of year, and just in general in the Carolinas. We've had continuing drought conditions over the last few months, and so we desperately need rain. Futurecast, here's Friday, 5 p.m. Notice the clouds will just now be building in. Good news here is that we'll actually be pretty warm Friday, getting close to 60, and we'll hit that high temperature before the clouds move in, which means we'll still be warm. The clouds will help act like that blanket. I know we talk about this a lot, which will keep temperatures overnight very mild. So if we reach 60 on Friday, then that means our lows only can get into the 40s with all the clouds. So still chilly, right? But not the 30s like where we are right now. Here's 11 o'clock Friday. You can see a few showers starting to creep in west of our area. And then we are looking at more widespread light to moderate rain for most of Saturday morning, with a lot of this starting to filter out by the afternoon. Now, this is as far out as our model goes. What I can tell you is I likely will be keeping in at least a 30 to 20% chance of rain through most of the afternoon Saturday. But I still think the bulk of the moisture will be in the morning. Duke's Mayo Bowl, of course, coming up on Friday. Still expecting really mild conditions. Again, same thing. We hit 60 on Friday, then the clouds move in, meaning our temperatures will be pretty mild. Upper 40s, low 50s. You saw the model data just a second ago. I'm still keeping that 20% in, not really for actual true rain, but for those areas of clouds, when the patchy clouds get low to the ground and you can get a little bit of mist, some areas of drizzle, I want us to be prepared for that possibility because of all the moisture that will be around. So as we look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day, with the, I guess technically, again, it is warmer, but with the lack of total drop in temperatures Saturday morning to the 30s, this will be a good thing, right? We're only getting into the 40s, which means the morning is relatively mild temperature-wise. However, because we get wedged in, our highs will only reach the upper 40s. So that's probably the grossest day we'll see. 60% chance of rain. Now, this is based on the entirety of the day. I think everybody, and I truly mean everybody, will see rain Saturday morning, but it's likely to not rain all day. So I don't want to put 100% chance and have you guys think that Saturday is going to be a complete mess of a day, but we will likely trend those rain chances upward or downward as we come into better agreement over the next few days. But again, prepare accordingly. Small chance of rain Friday and into early Saturday. We're drier, much more quiet Sunday and beyond into next week, where you can clearly see temperatures will eventually reach back into the mid to even upper 60s. So we're going to go to a 2-minute break. We'll come back with Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFMY and talk more New Year's, how the year wrapped up here in Charlotte and Greensboro. We'll be right back. Tim Buckley, last show of 2025.
Woo! Yes,
Can you see my
Happy New Year
bows, my celebratory bows on my dress?
I'm looking very closely. I see them now that you turned. Yes.
Aren't they so festive?
They don't stand out because it's not a different color, but now I think it's a really good choice.
It's black and navy, so I feel like it's a little bit more obvious on the green screen, but it's a rented dress. You take what you can get, Tim.
If they were green bows, they wouldn't do much of anything exciting on the green screen. So, yeah, that's a good choice.
Okay, so, Tim, you actually inspired me because I saw your tweet about Greensboro's, like, average, your highest highs and your lowest lows of the year.
Yeah.
So I looked up Charlotte's. 27 or July 27th, 102. Second year in a row.
Why does it get so hot there?
I'm just saying, second year in a row that we've gotten to 100 plus for multiple days.
Wow.
And before 2024, obviously last year, it hadn't happened since 2015. So again, that doesn't mean we can't have cold snaps, but I think this is a good reminder too about when people talk about like climate change, and they'll be like, well, it still gets cold, and it absolutely does. But what NOAA has found is essentially in the 50s and 60s, there was a ratio of about 1-to-1 for cold waves and hot waves, or heat waves, whatever. And then now that ratio is closer to 2-to-1. So it's not that it doesn't get cold, it just gets hot way more often. So July 27th, 102, December 15th, 16, just a few days ago. That was our coldest of the whole year. And our wettest was August 5th with 2.5 inches of rain.
Okay. Interesting.
Let's see yours.
You get any snow? Did you have a snow day on the numbers there as well?
No, I skipped it because the numbers are just so puny.
That's okay.
But I'll look it up. Do you want to show yours graphic? Because you made a nice little graphic. I just wrote it down.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have time.
If our pal Jeb could pop it up. There it is.
He's got
your
it.
Year in review for Greensboro. Happy New Year to Jeb as well. Jeb behind the scenes. Never
Happy New
gets
Year's,
any
everybody.
credit on the Weather Impact show. There he is. So we're looking at these numbers. Again, Greensboro, what I was kind of taking away from this is that, honestly, I don't find this to be that extreme of a year. One way or another. These don't really jump off the page. We had no temperatures close to 100 up here. 96 twice was our hottest. The coldest, surprisingly, was in December. Usually you would find your coldest weather in January, maybe February. But that was just a couple weeks ago. Like Brittany said, 11 degrees on the 15th. Our wettest day was 3.5 inches. And I had to go back and check the date, because by far the most intense weather event in North Carolina this year was Tropical Storm Chantal. That actually hit on July 6th. So oddly enough for Greensboro, our wettest day was 3 days afterwards, when we just had a big old thunderstorm sit over the airport with 3 inches of rain. Our snowiest day was January 10th at about 2 inches. It's been since 2018 that we've had a 4-inch snow day. It's been a while. And our windiest day was back in September at about 50-ish miles per hour. But ironically, Brittany, we just did that a couple days ago, too, at about 50 miles per hour. I guess that was on Monday of this week. So
yeah, we had some
overall,
50s here,
nothing
too.
too crazy this year. Yeah.
Yeah. I did look it up, Tim. We have the same snowiest day, January 10th. But whereas you got 2.1, would you like to guess how much Charlotte got?
I will guess 0.9.
0.5.
Oh, well, that's pitiful. Yeah,
so you would
that's kinda
lose
sad.
Price is Right rules, but you were very close.
We shouldn't be laughing. There's a lot of pain when it comes to missing out on snowfall.
I
but,
know.
If we don't laugh, we'll cry, I suppose, as they say.
Well, on that note, do we want to run a weather IQ as to why it's so hard to get snow in the Carolinas?
Yeah, sure. I'm interested to see what you found out for this. So let's play that tape.
In simple terms, snow in Charlotte is rare because when it's cold enough, it's not wet enough outside. But sometimes when it is wet enough, it's too warm. But to understand why it's so tough to find snow here, we have to first understand how snow falls in the first place. Snow is an accumulation of packed ice crystals that initially begins high up in the atmosphere. It forms when the temperature is at or below freezing and there's moisture present. If the temperature stays at or below 32 degrees all throughout its trek to the ground, it'll stay a snowflake. If not, you might get sleet, freezing rain, or even graupel. So, the number one thing we need is cold air at all levels of the atmosphere. But that cold air has to arrive before the moisture. We have plenty of moisture here in the Carolinas, from the Gulf and the Atlantic, but the ocean's warmth can influence what type of precipitation happens. This is why storm track is important. A slight shift in track and now we're on the warm side of a system. A common setup in the Carolinas that can lead to cold air damming is overrunning. This occurs when warm, moist air is lifted over shallow cold air, creating precipitation. If the air is cold enough near the ground, it can snow. But if it's too warm, you have rain again. That's why every degree counts and where it happens matters. Here is Charlotte's best setup for snow, the Miller A nor'easter storm track. This scenario tugs cold air into the Piedmont while feeding it with moisture from the Carolina coast, prolonging snow potential. This sets up the cold air before the moisture, which helps increase the chance for snow in Charlotte. Miller B nor'easters can also supply both at the same time, but the track is a little more uncertain. With your snowy weather IQ, I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. So that is fake snow, just to be clear. There's no snow in Charlotte. But, yeah, Tim, I think the moral of the story is it needs to be cold and wet at the same time.
It's definitely hard to do, right? Because you need the cold, and like we talked briefly about yesterday, and you explained here, a lot of times our cold air is dry air, and the moist air is usually pretty warm. So it's a bad combination to have, or a difficult combination to attain. You want the cold and wet, but not too warm. Everything just has to be just right. It all has to work out just right.
And I think that's why there's the misconception, which we've done weather IQs on this before, about how it can be too cold to snow. It never can be too cold to snow. Remember, it snows in Antarctica, but it can
That's
be
right.
too dry to snow. But I think a lot of those
times for us,
misconceptions.
And we just talked about, okay, what's the coldest weather that we had this year? 10 degrees, 15 degrees, whatever the case. Super rare for us in the Carolinas to have snow at that temperature, because usually to get that temperature you really need that pure Arctic air, which for us is usually going to squash out any of that Gulf moisture and just push it too far to the south. So typically our snow events, our snowstorms, they're with pretty marginal temperatures, whether they be the upper 20s or low 30s. You can even get snow at 35, 36 degrees as long as the air above our heads is plenty cold enough.
And I like those snows too, because they're like the big fat wet snowflakes instead of like the teeny tiny dry ones, and those are my favorite personally. So
they can be really fun and really pretty to look at, but it does make it tougher to accumulate. And, a couple of weeks ago, we had some of those, snow bursts happening, at least up in my part of the Piedmont. We had snow for 6 to 8 hours, and it barely even made a coating just because that air temperature was a little bit too warm. But it truly is hard to snow in the Carolinas. So, it's easy to complain about it, but our real reaction should be whenever it happens is like, wow, it's actually happening. Isn't that something? We're just amazed because
and
it is hard to do.
Things that don't often happen. Let's just remind people that this time of year you got to trust your local forecaster and not the random pictures and videos you might get posted on Instagram and Facebook of some random snow maps that say crazy snowstorm coming, because Tim Buckley and Brad Panovich, of course, too, have very specific forecasting rules in the Carolinas.
We do, and you might have seen some of these maps going around recently. There was a lot of humdrum and expectation that maybe next week could be some big snow in the southeast or somewhere like this. That's all fizzled out. Now next week looks to be in the 60s. So it's good to kind of keep your wits about you when it comes to winter forecasting. And I have these things. They're silly. I made them, I don't know, close to 10 years ago. They're called Tim's Snow Rules for North Carolina. So, Jeb, if you want to pop them up here.
I like it.
Rule number 1 is what Brittany just told us. It's hard for it to snow in North Carolina. And some people, kind of they push back on that and say, well, no, it snows every year. It does. But what I mean is you might only get it to happen once or twice. If it were easy for it to snow in North Carolina, it would happen all the time. But you really have to have a specific set of circumstances. And Brittany, I like rule number 2 a lot. This one has served me well, certainly in forecasting, and you know this as well as anybody. If we don't have cold air locked in beforehand for a snow event, you really want to. You're really not going to have any chance. So if you gotta have snow, you gotta have cold air here first. Playing catch up doesn't usually work out. So what we really are saying is, if you have it raining and it's cold out there, you're not going to drop that temperature cold enough to change it over to snow. Not very often. It's pretty rare for that one to happen. So I think this is one of the most helpful forecasting rules for snow in the Carolinas, is that you want to have the cold air here beforehand.
We saw that a few weeks ago. Remember what was the event that people were going crazy on social media, and we kept saying that it wasn't going to. And then I think during Live Weather Impact, you were looking at the temperatures, and it was already raining, and it was like 45, and we were like, you guys, it's not happening.
And we see in the models a lot of times that they'll show this as a possibility, but boy, oh boy, it only happens, once in a blue moon. So it's not something to really hang your hat on. And we don't need to go one by one through all of these, but, just some other words of wisdom. Anything beyond 3 days that you're seeing a snow accumulation map for, boy, is that to be taken with a grain of salt. There's so many factors. You need to get every detail of the forecast right to get the snow amount right. Anything beyond 3 days, it should be taken with some skepticism. And a lot of the reason for that is we often have sleet that mixes in with our snowfall in the Carolinas. And number 4 just says that sleet ruins everything. If you get any amount of sleet in a snowfall, it can really just squash the total. If it changes over more quickly than we think, we're forecasting amounts probably that'll be too high for the event. So any amount of sleet can make that snow turn really, really low amounts instead of high ones. And then the rest is just saying, don't freak out. A lot of times people get really emotional when it comes to snow or the winter time. Try and keep your emotions in check. We don't need to go crazy here. But boy, have you ever noticed that, like, of all the type of weathers, it's snow or winter weather that really drives our emotions high or low one way or another?
It's wild. I actually remember my first winter in Charlotte, big. I'd worked all around the Southeast, but probably the first place that I worked where it could snow essentially every single year. So I sat down with Brad.
Sure.
I wanted to write down, which models he thinks are the best, like his kind of process for forecasting. I mean, the point is to learn from him, right? And one of the things he said was, people here want it to snow. They will be upset if it doesn't. So the one tip I have for you is to ramp up the totals, but try to never have to ramp them back down because they're going to be really upset. If you say 6 inches, it better be 6 inches.
Right. And just a little bit of behind the scenes for people, Brittany, is, a lot of times, a lot of the data that we're looking at, and even if, you get a consensus of computer models all looking at the same thing, they might forecast 6 inches of snow for Charlotte. 9 times out of 10, that number is going to be too high, not too low. Sometimes by more than half.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's much smarter to go with a 3 to 4 inch forecast or a 2 to 4 inch forecast when you're seeing data like that. Because like we said, any little bit of mixing, maybe the dry air cuts into the amount of moisture that you have available, maybe the path is just a little different. All of those things factor into it. And so I agree with you. I agree with Brad. If I'm putting 4 inches on the map, I really, really think there's a good chance of 4 inches. And the opposite, I'd rather be too low than too high is what I'm saying. Because
for sure,
when we're promising snowfall, we're promising some fun memories that people can have a cool experience with your kids or your grandkids, having some fun out there in the wintertime. And we don't want to, cry wolf about it. So that's just the way it is.
I think the biggest thing for us in the Carolinas, we're not in we're not New England, Upper Midwest. We really have to be on the money more. Like, snow is like fun. It's like the ice storms that we're like very serious about. Like, not that we're not serious about snow,
sure.
but because our snow impacts are normally relatively low, it's like all about the ice. If there's a big ice storm, it's not just the black ice, but it's the chance, for power outages and all that stuff. So that's where I feel like we really ramp things up, is if there's a chance for ice. If it's snow, it's all fun and games on Live Weather Impact. But if it's ice, it might be a different story.
Nobody's disappointed when you don't get a ton of ice, that's for sure. Ice is so bad, and such a big part of our Carolina climatology in the wintertime are horrible ice storms. And we've also, we've been, in a snow drought of sorts. We've been pretty fortunate not to have too many huge ice events either, at least not devastating ones. You look back through some of the history, we've had some 1 inch freezing rain events sometimes that have, done power outages for more than a week for some places. It's been a while since we've had really, really bad ones like that, and I hope that stays to be the case, because there's nothing fun about freezing rain whatsoever.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think the big thing with power lines, we saw that I don't even remember which winter it was, but we saw that a few winters ago, where there was those crazy ice storms in Texas, and unfortunately all those people died from their power outages and things like that. And we can have crazy power outages here in Charlotte as well. I think of Christmas Eve 2022 when it was 9 degrees, Christmas Eve morning, and there was definitely some power loss.
Yeah, because it was so windy too. So with the wind and the power outages and the cold air, that was just, a mix of all sorts of bad outcomes. But, we're talking all about the snow. If we had to do any sort of long ranging right now, I think we can guarantee the next 7 days are pretty snow free. And beyond that, while it had been looking a little more interesting toward the second week of January, now that doesn't really look that interesting for winter potential anymore. And I kind of try and count the weeks. If you're a snow lover or a snow hater, they're both, how many weeks are still on the table? all of January, all of February, usually like the first 2 weeks of March are options for trying to cash in on something. That's only about 10 weeks left. So, there's still plenty of time, but we're going to, watch it 1 week at a time.
That's wild. Only 10 weeks left. All right, before we go, we have about 30 seconds before the show ends. So sad. Do you have any resolutions or maybe weather resolutions for the winter in Greensboro that you want to put out there? Maybe some manifestation?
Only accurate snow forecasts will be posted and talked about. And I hope that we get 2 snow events. 2 snow events is my hope for all of you in the next couple of months. Well, how about you? What is your weather resolution?
I think 2 snow events is fair, and I think you can guarantee that you won't be finding us posting crazy model statistics on social media. That's pretty much a guarantee.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, Happy New
Be safe,
Year.
have a fun night. We'll see you
Yes,
tomorrow.
Tim. Happy New Year. See you next year, friend.
See ya.